Hi everybody, welcome back to Ecuador. We're back to visit Grace with the Ecuador legal team, and today we're going to talk about real estate, so let's go upstairs. As promised, we have part 2 here with Grace, and we're discussing real estate in this video. We're going to talk about Ecuador real estate, rentals, purchasing, and basically everything that you may be concerned about regarding moving to Ecuador potentially or coming down here and buying property. Grace and the Ecuador legal team are experts in visas and real estate and everything in between. So if you have a need where a lawyer might be required or you have a question about law in Ecuador, Grace and the team here at Ecuador legal team should be a go-to stop for you. Their information will be down below so that you can WhatsApp them, you can email them, and make contact. So Grace, let's talk about real estate here in Ecuador, and maybe you can give us a little bit of information about issues that expats have had that have come here and some of the things to look out for and how to buy a home or purchase land, and let's talk about leases and rentals as well.
Hello everyone. Okay, we are going to talk about the purchase of property in Ecuador, and I should begin saying that there's virtually no restriction on foreign ownership of property in Ecuador. Therefore, you don't need to be a resident of Ecuador. You can be a tourist, or you can even be outside of the country and purchase property just with power of attorney through your attorney and remote control. And your attorney will take care of all the steps that are necessary and do the title search and pass the money through, or arrange for the payments. And if they're done abroad, it can be done that way as well. And you can even use the property as basis for your residency visa, because that's an option if it is worth at least $40,000. So that's very good investment also to purchase property in Ecuador, because it's low maintenance.
That's a great point. So the $40,000 investor visa can be satisfied by owning property or a home in Ecuador. So that's fantastic. So you kind of killed two birds with one stone. If you're putting that towards your living accommodation, you don't necessarily have to do the CDs or the other investments.
That is correct. Yes, you can buy the property, and as long as you keep it for at least 2 years visa term, you will keep your temporary residency visa.
With regards to security of property here in Ecuador, I'm going to give you a for instance that many Americans may be aware of. A situation in Mexico happened maybe a little bit over a decade ago, where some San Diegans had moved down to Baja California in Mexico and had some beachfront property and homes that they thought they were their forever homes. They owned their homes, but the land underneath the home apparently was not really their land, and the government came in and took the property basically away from the Americans that were down there. There was a lot of back and forth on that, and I won't go into how that all got settled out, but is there any reason to think that the Ecuador government or somebody else might be able to come in and take a home away from somebody if they were to purchase a home in Ecuador?
No, in fact, there's not been any antecedents of any property being seized in Ecuador by the government or anyone. There's been some indigenous land that is in the constitution, cannot be subdivided or sold. It is communal land, and so the individuals that live there do not have outrights to the property, and they cannot sell it. So sometimes what has happened, especially in the coastal area, is that people who have no ownership of the property has sold what they call their piece of property, their lot of property, to people, and they bought it without knowing that they had no ownership. Of course, that's very easily prevented if you hire an attorney to check the paperwork.
Have you had any legal issues like that yourself, where you've had to work on somebody's behalf, or maybe they were buying a home and you found issues?
Yes. In the coastal area, there's many times when you see the title chain and you see that the property has been owned by the indigenous community, and with the years there's been changes and some people have been able to sell their piece, and then through the changes of titles and the history it's become legalized. But if at least 15 years have not passed, you're not safe. So it's good to have a good attorney on your side to take care of the investigation of the title for problems like this and many others that perhaps are not so common, and I don't want to scare people, but it is important that they know that they're dealing with the actual owner of the property, that there's only one owner, and if there are more, this person is in agreement. And for instance, if the property is owned by heirs, all they have is derechos y acciones is how they call it, which is shares, is the interest on a estate that the person that died, who was the owner of the property, has they have inherited from that person.
Okay. When we're looking at people moving down here, and obviously, having purchased a property, having a home to move into is going to be a priority for a good amount of the expats coming here. But moving here is very complicated, and bringing your belongings down can be a nightmare with the shipping. And I know that there's some great shipping companies out there, but there's stories about people not getting their stuff moved out here. If I'm not mistaken, you're able to put people in contact with reputable movers and shippers and even real estate agents. Is that fair to say?
Yes, we have many good, reliable real estate agents that we can recommend. And if you look through the websites, you will see many sites where you can find great opportunities to invest in Ecuador. However, when you deal with a real estate agent, you need to know that they are paid by the seller. So you want to hire a buyer's attorney to do the title search. And when they are performing the title search, they will request a certificate of no liens, which has the description of the property, the name of the owners, the chain of title, and it shows that if there is a prohibition to sell, if there are any pending debts with the municipal, if there are any restrictions. And so the title search is good from the beginning. For instance, if someone is purchasing property to develop, they want to know if they can subdivide the land, if they can build how many stories they can put in the building, and also any other zoning restrictions in the area, what is the size of the smallest lot for subdivision, or if they purchase near navigable river, there's an area that is public and they want to have that limited.
Okay.
And because they want to know where they can put their fences. Sometimes you purchase from companies, so your attorney or yourself need to make sure that you're dealing with the power of attorney of the company and that the appointing is current. And the same with when you're purchasing property from heirs, they need to have a representative to sign for all the heirs, or all the heirs need to appear in person for the signing. So and there's also other other aspects that can be need to be investigated. For instance, that there might be an owner of a property, but someone else can be the one that has the right of use, and so that person needs to come for the closing as well. When you take ownership also, and you need to be aware that it is important to know that your husband or wife is included in the title, because even when you don't name that person, if you're a married person, your husband or wife is included, and that has some bearing for when the inheritance law is applied. If the husband or the wife dies, children are obligatory heirs.
Okay.
Not necessarily the husband or wife. So it's important that you consult with your attorney before you take ownership, because they can advise you to make a structure, for instance, to gain some flexibility in regards to inheritance rights.
Okay, so you put a little caveat into the paperwork.
Correct.
So Grace, can you kind of walk us through the purchase process, what the requirements are, and go a little step by step for us?
Sure. The purchase process can be done in 2 steps or just in one. For instance, when you're purchasing property and paying in installments, or you give a down payment, it's not like you will get financing. It's not so common. Normally, you pay 50% down, and then you have a certain period of time, like 6 months or a year, to make payments or complete the payment at the end. In that situation, you sign a promise to purchase and sale, promesa de compra-venta, and this contract has many clauses. Contains all the agreed upon clauses, and you want to make sure that it has the deadlines, it has a penalty or fines for delay in compliance, and of course there's a big fine for lack of compliance. But the promise to purchase and sale can be as detailed as you want, and if you buy property under construction, or sometimes developers allow you to make changes in the distribution of the property, or they volunteer to and include in the price the installation of cooktop or any other appliances that you bring from your country of origin or that you buy here. Any improvements that are agreed, everything needs to be detailed in the promise to purchase and sale. There should be deadlines to complete that, and the payments should be subject to the progress of the construction work.
Very, very interesting. That's very good information. I'm glad that we are discussing that.
That's when you do the promise to purchase and sale. If you complete the payment at the closing, you get the final deed. So that is the second step. You go to the purchase and sale signing at the notaries. For that, your attorney must have had completed a title investigation and needs to have paid all the taxes, like the transfer tax. The notary's fee will be charged at the notaries, and the buyer needs to have the check ready to deliver to the seller when he signs on the sale. After that, your title will be a little bit in the limbo. That's why a title insurance is so, title investigation is so important, because we have no title insurance in Ecuador. There are some entities that, or companies that do title insurance in Ecuador, but it's almost not worth the hassle and the expense, because they issue a policy that has so many exceptions that you are better off trusting an experimented attorney that will give you a guarantee that your title will get registered in your name, and that's all you need. And they make sure that you get ownership at the end of the 6 or 7 days that it takes for registration of the title after the closing.
So I guess really knowing that some people are going to have real estate agents and some people are going to do a direct relationship with a buyer, and maybe they're going to sell to another individual. Coming to you would be an important stop to making that happen and putting all the pieces in places when there's no realtor involved. That you've got
not only when
direct
there's
buyer
no
relationship.
realtor involved, because remember the realtor is paid by the seller,
Mhm.
and if they take you to the attorney of the seller, the contract will have some clauses that are not exactly to your benefit.
Sure.
So it's preferable that you have a buyer's attorney on your side to look at your interest and customize the clauses for you. Not only when you do it in 2 steps with the promise to purchase and sale and the final deed at the end, but also when you go directly to the final deed, and that is when you have all the money and you have the option to pay that day of the closing.
Mhm.
If your attorney has already made the payments of the transfer tax and the seller has paid the capital gains tax, then all the paperwork is in place for the closing, and at that moment you pay them the value, the amount that is for the property, and the seller signs the transference of ownership to you.
So
Then it goes to registration.
you said a couple of words that were really important in there: capital gains tax. So if you are a seller of a property, how does the capital gains tax affect the seller? If a viewer here is, maybe they're in Ecuador, they're going to sell their home,
Yeah.
what's the responsibility to the country of Ecuador on the capital gains?
The capital gains tax is the responsibility of the seller, and is calculated in the following way. If you pay 10% of the difference between the purchase price and the sales price. For instance, if you bought a property in $100,000 and then you've owned it for 5 years and you sell it for $200,000, the difference is $100,000.
Mhm.
You pay 10% of the difference, which would be $10,000. But if you've been an owner for 5 years, you will have a discount of 5% per year that you've been the owner. That means then a 25% discount on the $10,000.
When you own a home in the United States, in some situations, if you are putting money into the home to fix it up, maybe you're buying a fixer-up project. So you bought the home for $60,000, you put $40,000 into fixing it up, and when you eventually sell it, do you get any credit against the capital gains for the money that you put into the property on improvements?
Yes, and according to law, you have the right to get discounts for the expenses that you've invested in the improvements, but make sure that you register the new construction or the improvements, and that you keep all legal receipts of the expenses, or if you've hired an architect, that there is what is called an entrega de obra, delivery of the works contract.
And as far as the amount of the tax, did you say it was 10% of the value of the
profit.
leftover profit?
Yeah.
So it's not as bad as what it could be in other countries, but 10%, it's something that Ecuador is going to request of you if you are a seller. As a landlord, you also have the tax as well for the rental income if it exceeds $11,300. If your property value is less than $11,300 in the profit, do you get still taxed on that first $11,300?
No.
Okay, so you can make
That's the
$11,300 profit on the sale without there being a tax implication.
No, that's a different thing.
Okay.
The capital gains tax, everyone pays that whenever they sell
From dollar one?
property. Yes.
Okay.
If they make any profit, the 10% they pay 10% of the difference between the purchase price and the sales price. Of course, there is a discount for senior citizens, and so if you make sure that your attorney makes the obligation to get the discount for capital gains tax if you're a seller, or the transfer tax if you're a buyer.
Are there rules about leasing or renting a location here, and a reason for an attorney to be involved in looking over those contracts or discussing that? And also, can you comment on the laws of eviction that somebody might encounter if they were to lease or rent here, and what they need to watch out for?
Sure. Many people comes and just deals with the manager or the realtor, and that's good, but it is important that you don't just trust in a verbal contract when you lease a property. Have an attorney look at the lease contract, because sometimes they are just forms, and you want to have the forms customized for your interest. For instance, if any agreements that you make, you want to put in writing. You don't, you trust just the agreement, or even the language could be a barrier for people to have misunderstandings. And so the rental contracts normally have the term, which is for residency is a minimum of 2 years, is the price. And when you put a deposit or you pay the first month's rent, you want to make sure that you get a receipt. Some people gives the deposit to just the manager or whoever is in charge. That could be a mistake. Every time you make the monthly payments, also make sure you get a receipt of payment, and also make sure that what you're paying for, what is included in the rental monthly fee, and you have the right to look at the property and inspect it and make sure that everything is working correctly. And by law, the repairs of the water or provision of basic utilities is the responsibility of the owner.
Okay, so all repairs, regardless of dollar amount, are on the owner, typically under a rental. So it's not
unless agreed differently.
Agreed.
If the contract says that all repairs will be done by the tenant, that can be agreed. Anything in the contract can be, but if nothing has been said, the structural problems have to be repaired by the owner.
What about security of living there, eviction? If an owner decides that we just don't like you, or I want to move in there now and I don't need you in there anymore, can they come and tell you that, hey, I want you out next week?
No, they have to let you know with at least 3 months in advance, and they cannot claim other excuses than the specific determined reasons in the law. For instance, no payment of 2 months of rent. If they've done scandal or brawls in the property, or if they
so scandal would be like doing something illegal in the property?
Yes, for instance, keeping hazardous or dangerous materials in the property, or making damage. Also, when the property is ruined and they need to make repairs, they can request that the tenant leaves, and when they will have 90 days to vacate the property.
Okay, so there's not going to be, typically, most people won't have a worry about a no-notice eviction, get out, because a lot of times Americans that are coming down here, they may do a long-term lease or think that they're going to stay somewhere for a long time, but they may have the investor visa, or they want to leave for 90 days out of the country. Maybe under investor visa they might take off for 6-7 months, but they want to have a home base, that they have their stuff stowed, and they want to have that security that's there. So if a landlord wanted to take over within 90 days, is there a way that they have to be able to prove that they've contacted or relayed that information to the tenant?
Sure, they have to go through a small process, but it's legal. You have to notify them with the eviction 90 days in advance. And you can only request the premises as a landowner if you don't have other place to live. If you are yourself a tenant and you've lost a place where to live and you have a home that is being rented, you can ask for the tenant to leave, but they will have the 90 days to move. And also when you sell the property, the new owner has 30 days to evict you or to notify you with the eviction, and you will have 90 days to vacate. And also if there are payments that you're not accomplishing, and in the contract it might say that one of the reasons for asking that you vacate the property is subleasing or lack of payment of utility bills, if that's your responsibility and it's not included in the rental fee.
Okay. So if somebody were worried about having their belongings in a rental property and that they may not be gone, maybe seeing you to put language in there that if there was a reason that they were not able to be contacted, they were evicted, and they were unaware of it, that their belongings needed to be stored in a safe place and not be sold off, is that something that would be workable?
That's already understood.
Okay.
Once you become a tenant and that's your home, and the owner has no right to even come in the property, they need to give you the keys, and it's your property, and they cannot invade it unless you allow it. Or you can put in the lease as a landowner that you have the right to inspect the property in agreement with the seller with the tenant, as long as he is in the property. And so the privacy is completely respected.
I'm going to throw you a curveball because we really didn't talk about this scenario, but people are going to buy property here and they might not stay in the in Ecuador, and maybe they're going to go back to the U.S., but they want to hold on to their home so they can become the landlord. And if they're a landlord, or if they go into doing maybe an Airbnb with their property,
Right.
I'm assuming they should still speak to you prior to doing this and to flip over to the landlord side to ensure that their properties and their rights as landlords are
Right.
being protected.
Both, in both cases, if you become a landlord or if you're a tenant, you always want to have the contract in written to protect your interest and to make sure that the agreement is put in written and nothing is loose to then have any confusions. For instance, one of the main problems that tenants have is that the landlord does not do the repairs. So that's something that you want in writing, and a time limit of maximum 1 day for water leaks or an obstruction in your toilet and major things like that. Internet problems are also something that needs to be taken care of urgently.
Yeah. As a landlord, do you have a tax responsibility to Ecuador if you're making any kind of income, whether it be through Airbnb or doing a rental?
Of course, you have to have what is called a RUC number. It's a taxpayer ID number, and you need to issue legal bills. For residencies, you have 0 taxes, but you still have to file it. However, if your income overpasses $11,315 this year, you are subject to pay income tax, and you need to file your taxes and the IVA tax, which is the sales tax.
So you have to make over $11,300 in rental income before you would be subject to a tax to the country of Ecuador.
On income.
Correct, on income. So if
But let me clarify though
Okay.
that if for the IVA tax, you still have to file taxes, although for residency zero. But the IVA tax on purchase and sales is normally 12%, but not with rentals,
Okay. Okay.
except for commercial. For commercial, there is the 12% tax.
Okay, good. That might be of importance to some of the viewers here with some questions on that. So that's good to know. Well, I know you've answered most of my questions. Am I forgetting to ask you anything?
I don't think so. I cannot think of anything right now.
Well, some of you probably do have a question, and I'm sorry if I didn't ask it. But if you do have a question and it has not been answered, please look in the description. We will have the contact information, so you can email Grace, you can call her, WhatsApp her. But we want to make sure that you have your comfort if you're coming to Ecuador, that you have a resource. And I think Grace and the team here would be a great first stop for your questions.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please remember to subscribe to Travel With Us by Warren and Julie. And Grace and Nelson's information from the Ecuador legal team will be included in the description of this video below. Please feel free to reach out to them directly. And again, we're looking forward to you joining us on our adventures and as we investigate the cost of living and what is required to live abroad. We intend to spend the next 10 to 20 years traveling abroad, giving you information on what it's like to live in locations as we spend a month, 2 or 3 months in various countries, cities, and locations. Please also look us up on Facebook and follow our group, Travel With Us by Warren and Julie.